John, take it away.
Can you turn John on?
I'm off mute.
Oh, Scott's going to turn him on, it's fine.
Let me fiddle with your buttons.
Is that me on that? Good, right. I don't know how I can beat the John McAfee video, but let's just go for it, because yeah, that was something. But yeah, who am I? I'm a master's student at Napier's Advanced Cyber Security program with Edmund Napier. I am third year running ENUSEC Treasurer still, and I'm also now working for CISO, Strategy and Architecture, within TSB. The master's is now part-time, unfortunately, where you can see I'm always very productive. So yeah, jumping on straight into it, let's just jump straight into the scenario. There's been a breach, there's been a leak, data's been lost. Someone screwed up, but they got access via an ex-employee's account. I'm buzzing. Anyway, and some poor sod's looking like that. There's a fire, someone who used to work at the company has accessed this data and it's been leaked, it's been lost. Is it a breach? Is it a leak? That depends by definition. But first, other things that could have been lost, the important things. You've got customer data. You've got any source code of any applications you're working on. If you're a bank, if you're a software for service company, any of your source code. You've got the inventory data, any of your infrastructure, any of your applications, any of your key items. Oh, wrong button. Any of your employee data as well. It's just as, I'm just going to avoid this side of the stage because quite frankly that's getting annoying. Any of your employee data is just as valuable as your customer data. And it means all the same. You also have your national insurance number for your payslips and everything as well. And any trade secrets, anything that you might not want your competitors to know, anything you might not want your staff to know. And then the last one is any research your company's conducting, anything you guys are looking into that is cutting edge, anything that you're ready to publish, ready to present, and it can all be lost. Now back to the definition of a breach or a leak. A breach is a very deliberate, very forceful attack, whereas a leak is someone somewhere within your company is done fucked up and there's a vulnerability or there's a flaw somewhere that has just been exploited. A good metaphor for determining the difference is your car's just been stolen. They smashed the window, hot-wired the car and rode off into the sunset. It's a breach, very forceful. But if you left the door open, key in the ignition, and nice piece of candies leading up to the door, that's a leak. You led them to it, or you left it vulnerable for them to then just take. Although, the ex-employee, did he have weak credentials? Did he have disgruntled with the company? Was he leaving under a grey cloud? Hello.
It's always the intern.
It's always the intern. Not wrong, it could be, it always is, but he could have done it for a number of reasons. He could have done it accidentally and left it on a post-it note in Starbucks or in the background of a photo he had. Is it the user management team? Did they remove the account after he left? How was he active on it recently? And they just didn't think to look at it. But then again, that's defined by the policies. If my button works, the policies. Is there a policy in place to remove leavers from your company, remove their access to accounts? This guy could have been high up in the company and access to numerous systems, your cloud platforms, your internal messaging, your emails, everything and anything. And his access is left there because he accessed it the day before he left. He's not been inactive for 6 months. He's not been inactive for however long, and it's not been pinged to you. But is there a policy in place to actually remove him from the credentials? Or alternatively, if there is there one to remove him after he's not been active for so long? If an employee's not been active on their account on a platform within X months, will they get removed? But then that also, this thing is so temperamental. That also comes down to the application owners, either the people that manage the application or even the service provider, if it's a software as a service. Do they have a communication method for them to inform you saying, okay, hey, this month, these accounts haven't been active in so long. Do they get notified? Is there a monthly meeting or something between you and your third-party provider? Is there an internal meeting to review this? Or is this something that's just going to get picked up by an audit? Are you going to shoot yourself in the foot by not looking for this? Just a quick show of hands from everybody. Hands up if you're students. And I'm going by assumption that the rest of you, if you don't put your hands up, are industry. Hands up? Yeah, it's about a 50-50 split-ish. So for those that are in industry, you have probably heard stuff like this before, is where you have your domain split up to manage different things. You've got the applications team that manage all the applications in development for your company, or you've got the infrastructure team that manage all the hardware and all the platforms, the tools you guys use. You've got your SOC, or your threat intel team, that manage all the threats and security of your company. Or you've got the third-party team that would work with and communicate with your third-party companies to hopefully make sure this doesn't happen. But then that also raises the question of, do you communicate effectively with them? If this button works. Then it comes down to how they got in. So for a breach, the top 4, based on a quick Google I totally didn't do, are ransomware, malware, phishing emails, and denial of service. So this comes back down to an earlier presentation, and I can't see because they're very bright lights, but I'm sure he's in here, where he's talking about buying domains of minor misspellings of a company's website, to then, he put them, there he is, wait for everyone, there we go. He put them as a 404, generous of you, whereas other people could have redirected it, stolen their data, made it look like a real login page. I remember reading a while back, there was a fake Facebook made up, and it captured tons of credentials of people trying to log in, thinking it was the real deal. But then, is that how the ex-employee's credentials were lost? Did he try logging in by mistake into something that was spelled with an I instead of a U? Malware comes in anyway. Phishing emails, did he want to get in with the Nigerian princes? And denial of service, again with the buying domains. And that jumps to leaks. Again, how do leaks happen? You've got your mishandled data. Did they leave these unclassified UFO documents at the bus stop? That genuinely did happen by someone in government. I thought it was hilarious. You've got misconfigurations of servers or network devices or anything on your site, which can also lead to issues with logging in and security. Then you've got insider threats. Did your employee not get the promotion he wanted? Has he done fucked up in general? It can be malicious or benign for the fact that they can just come down to human error. And then the last one there is system errors. Again, just as misconfigurations. Button. There we go. And for preventing leaks, you've got data classification. Now this one's kind of important, and it's going to come up later again in the presentation, but you've got data classification where you can classify your data from it's fine, it's nothing you can't Google, to store this in Fort Knox. We don't want anyone getting into this. And the issue with this is you get people that come in and say, you know what, it's too much hassle to just sort this out neatly. It's too much hassle to constantly go through the different authentication practices to then get into the data if we make it too secure. So let's just shove it in lowest setting possible, which meant people can come in and be like, oh, hey, that's really interesting. Should I be seeing that? Probably not. And then you've also got, I've missed something somewhere, but anyway, you've got training your employees to make sure that they know to report things like this. One example of this is NU6 Latour Hack 2018. We ran a CTF. This was before my time on the committee, so it's not my fault, but we ran a CTF. We were at the Napier Craig Locker site, and one of the committee members at the time had left a piece of paper with the flags written down on it. Some kind person handed it in without actually taking any of the flags, or so we think at least, and didn't actually realize what they had just done. So make sure your employees know how to physically handle the data. Don't leave it lying around. Don't leave it at a bus stop like someone in government did. And you want to make sure that they're aware about phishing emails, that they're aware about what access they should and should not have, as well as maintaining active accounts so they don't get kicked off if you do have a strong account policy. But then there's also data protection. Is your data that you are classing as more confidential, more security required? Is it safe? Is it in a location where not everyone can access it? Then you've got recovery, because there's always the human error. There's always the human factor in which if there's a will, there's a way. And that can go down for two ways. For data breaches, if someone wants to find a way in, they will, likely. If not, they'll just keep trying until they do. Same with employees. If you force them to follow MFA on everything or do something that they just find tedious, they'll find a way to do it lazily, like making their passwords 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on. So recovery is something you need to always be ready for. You need to make sure that you are ready to say, oh shit, something's gone wrong. Let's make a nice public announcement, say, all right, we're aware of this, we're fixing it, or we fixed it, but still slyly putting out the small fires at the end. And then you've got the types of policies. Again, this comes down to the account removal we were discussing a moment ago, in whether or not you remove accounts after they've left after X months, if an employee no longer requires access for it, if it was like a 6-month contract, a 6-month project, if it's just for a quick, oh, hey, I need to quickly look into this. Do you even need an account at that point? And then there's also password policies. This comes down to two different factors as well. So obviously password policies is your standard password length, different characters, numbers, capitals, lowercase, the standard stuff. But then you can also enforce a password manager. Now this is a very touchy point for a lot of people, is what's the best password manager out there? Opinions? Shout outs?
The one you use.
The one your company makes you to use.
That's a good one. Exactly. So you need to make sure your company's vetted out a password manager that they trust, that they're certain is safe, and then enforce your employees to use it. So then they are following that, their passwords are safe, they're not in sticky notes sitting in Starbucks, sitting on your monitors, and that it then is down to the company itself for making sure that the passwords remain safe. And then jumping onto portal media, USBs. I've totally not got a USB in this person's laptop, and it could have had anything on it. She's in there and she has no idea. Anyway, no, it's only got this presentation, like 2-3-year-old college work anyway. But that kind of is suggestive that, do you allow your employees to bring in your USBs to work on your devices? But then it also is the bring your own device policies. Do you allow them to come in with their own laptops, tablets, mobile phones as well, actually? Because coming in and connecting to the network is opening up another vulnerability from it. If they take this tablet home or connect to public Wi-Fi in different manners, then their tablet is exposed to other things. It might not always be on your secure network. And that also comes down, brings up the point of acceptable use. So yes, they might be at work, they might work late every night, and they might want to scroll through Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, catch up with some friends or something to make sure, like, just take a wee break. And it's always good to do that. It's always good to be taking wee breaks, be productive. But what if they click on something sus? What if something is not what it seems to be? There's probably tons of links on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit that isn't the safest. So do you stop your employees from visiting these sites altogether? Do you stop them from visiting them? Do you limit what access they have? One example of this is I found out recently, unfortunately, that the university don't allow you to watch videos on Amazon Prime. In fairness, I was just trying to watch Indiana Jones. And jumping back to portal media as well, when I used to work at Starbucks ages ago, that's about 4 years now. Originally, when I started out, you could plug your USB in, no problem at all. I used it because I had to transport training videos between 3 different stores in Scotland. Then all of a sudden, when I was asked to do this again with the new updated training videos, all of a sudden I can't use my USB. And it's proof that they developed. They've recognized that this is a threat and going with it. And then there's also remote access, and this has come up significantly in the last year and a half with work from home. Do you allow your employees to work off public-based websites? If you've given them access to say, all right, that's fine, go work out of a cafe today. I know my manager, I know guys in my team have, I know plenty of people have, and they say, I'm working at a cafe today, that's public Wi-Fi. How does your network manage the traffic? Does it go through extra rigorous steps? So different policies and different architectures on how to manage the traffic that's coming in from different locations is also a key factor. And jumping back to the password policies, most common passwords that were breached in 2020. And that's based on the top 10. So going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 to 9. Picture 1 was a new one, password 1, 2, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then the new one at the bottom was Senna. This is a genuine question. Any idea? Anyone get any idea what that is? No, good, I'm not the only one. But yeah, so those were the top passwords. And this is essentially, does this? Yeah. This is what policy work is kind of like. So I'm just going to leave that blank. I thought there was sound with it, but oh well. I don't know if anyone works here with writing policies, with managing policies, but I'm sure they can maybe relate. When I say people find a way, if there's a will, there's a way. This is kind of what I mean. But yeah, and that brings us into information security management systems. NIST is a great one, and ISO 27001. NIST is a bit more technical. It's more control-based and consists of a range of recommended best practices for your company to follow, for you to impose on different situations in different places. And it also recommends a way to manage that as well. Whereas ISO is less technical, is more focused on risk, more on addressing the risk. But however, there's a bit of a misconception, and I was actually taught this at university. I was taught this misconception just last year when we're discussing information security management systems, which is that you have to pick one. You're told to focus in on one and make that your best one. But what really is best is to get a synergy from them both. And from that, it is better for data security and application security to have a combination of the two, where you address the risk, but you're also working based off controls as well. So jumping into this, the maturity ratings based on NIST's 853 security model. So this is the capability maturity model, from which you're rated 0 to 5 on a 6-number scale, 0 being you've done fuck all, to 5 being continuously improving. And there's another table that's going to come up in a minute which discusses the fact that this actually is not a fixed metric system. This can vary based on the size of your organization. If you're a small organization and you've only got a few stores, you've got a decent sized network, decent sized company, you've got your own sized security team and everything, then you probably want some greens across the board, a good chunk of them. So looking at this now, you've got the capability maturities, which you've got the capabilities represented by X and Y, the outcomes from 1 to 3. So you've got the main principle from X and Y, and you want to take out, you can take out however many you want, but you want to kind of pinpoint the key points you want to come out of this. One example of this is security within the system development lifecycle. And from that, you pick out the key factors, and then you assess how they're doing within your company. Are they being followed? Are they actually being protected? Is there things you can do to improve? Is there things that you're just absolutely ignoring based on the way you're rated? And then you've got your overall maturity score based on that as well. So jumping back to the rating model, you've got the continuously improving, which means you've essentially got everything nailed down. You can just keep going where you're going and keep adapting to everything new that comes your way. Then you've got 4, which is the maturity is defined as a metric-driven practice, and standardized practices and detailed metrics to allow for a governance oversight. So you've got a good overview of everything that is going on. When you get down to about 3, 2, you've got more of a practices are there, they're across the brand, and they're maybe could do with a bit more. Then you get down to 2, whereas you know they're there, you know they should be there, they're not there. And then 1 and 0. If you're at 1 and 0 and you're a large organization, you should be concerned. That should not be the case. And then it comes down to the tooling as well. So you can't just assess the maturity of your domains and how they're running things and how they're managing things. You have to assess the tools and the platforms in place as well. And to do that, you've got, so this is a very rough draft I threw together, hence general firewall question mark. And you've got your different devices where you have to assess for like a laptop, an iPad, or your tablet, your desktops, anything like that. You have to assess the tooling and operational maturity of them both. So I screwed up when making those cells. But then you have to go through each device. So if you've got a Cisco firewall, Palo Alto, and generic firewall, they're obviously different placed across your network. If you've got a different architecture for different ways traffic comes into your organization, you're going to want to place them in specific areas so that if you've got tablet coming in, obviously that's maybe a company tablet. Is it localized? Is it so one example for TSP would be, is it a branch tablet? Is it something used internally? Or is it your employee's tablet? Is it something they bring in, like a work from home? Is it a bring your own device laptop? We'll redefine where the traffic flows and redefine where the firewalls encounter its traffic. So to assess the maturity of that, you have to ensure that you've covered the basis and that they're actually being monitored and reassessed regularly as well. And that brings us, I pressed the wrong button. That brings us back to the table I mentioned a minute ago, where based on the size of your organization, for a small organization, if you're in 0, you've got nothing there, fair, but for medium to large organizations, that shouldn't be the case. If you are coming down to 5 now, it's unrealistic for kind of small-based, medium-based organizations to have that type of thing. This is based on a source, by the way. This is not my opinion. This is based on a source you'll see at the end of the presentation. However, that's based on unrealistic kind of goal. For a small organization, you might think you'll be there, but there are things you're obviously not going to be able to afford or able to do due to lack of skill, lack of financing. And jumping on to the next thing, another thing to do when assessing maturity levels, you can't just take them for their face value. Sometimes you need evidence, attestation. Are you going to get them to give code samples? If they're providing an application or if they're writing code to run within your organization, one example of this is I wrote a web scraper or something for coursework ages ago. But if I was to use that in my company, is it trusted? Do they want to see what it does? Do they want to see that it's not doing anything malcontent? Can provide it, they can review it and say, yeah, no, that looks good to go. Then you've got the discussion with the team. So obviously you want to discuss with your actual different domains on a regular basis that you are reviewing where they sit on the maturity levels and that you are coming back and reviewing that they're following the policies you've put in place, the capabilities that you're assessing them against. And you want to make sure that you're not going on a downward slope. It's okay to remain level. And as soon as you get to maybe like the 4th level we discussed a moment ago, then you're kind of doing all right. It's okay not to have any 5s because they just give you more to strive for. But then you also want to see if they have any policy documentation. So if they're working with Azure, if they're working for Azure to assess threats, then Sentinel, sorry, Azure Sentinel is what I'm thinking of. If they're working with that to assess threats coming into the organization, attacks heading your way, do they have any documentation for the rules and alerts they've got set up? More importantly, if you've got firewalls sat on the network, do you have any policy documentation for what is and what is not allowed? Is that documentation following the capabilities and the constraints and the policies defined previously? And yeah, I'm noticing that I'm a bit short on time, so I'm just going to wrap it up there. There's the references I mentioned, the common most password list, and that table I found, if anyone wants to contest that. Any questions?
Excellent. Can we get a round of applause, please? It's very kind. Thank you very much. It's dark. It's kind of cooler with the lights. Can we get a show of hands if anybody has questions? Ooh, in front. Cool.
Yep.
Chris, you're up.
So, out of everything that you explained, which model is your favorite?
So personally, when I came back to that coursework that I mentioned previously, I actually looked more at NIST. Not NIST, sorry. I avoided NIST because it seemed a bit messy at the time. and I went with ISO, and I realized ISO is just as messy. So personally, I do prefer NIST because they've got the nice tables, as I just demonstrated, to follow the capability and maturities. So yeah, NIST is probably my go-to.
Excellent. Anybody else? Ooh.
Oh,
This is not really a question, but I did some rapid Googling, and apparently Senha is Portuguese for password.
you're kidding.
Nice.
But there you go.
Reminiscent of the
Password,
Oshko.
just in a different language.
Kind of reminiscent of the Oshko 321 password story, if you ever heard of that. And they found out it was the Russian for butthole. That was a really interesting talk.
I hadn't heard of that one either.
Anybody else have any more questions? Cool. Well, final round of applause for John, please.